Let's go Dolphins! While everyone remains focused on Tua, the offense, and playoff expectations, the Dolphins coaching staff is quietly rebuilding the entire defensive identity from scratch. And the more you analyze the OTA reports, the more it seems that major changes may still be coming. There are players fighting for their future, veterans who may no longer be secure, young players suddenly receiving big opportunities. And one group of players in particular seems far more unstable than fans likely expected for 2026. But here's the craziest part. The coaches themselves seem to be searching for answers. This should make all Dolphins fans pay attention. Because when a team starts experimenting so much during OTAs, moving players around, testing hybrid roles, and openly discussing uncertainty at key positions, it usually means one thing. The competition is about to get intense. With over $20 million potentially available after June 1st, there's a strong possibility that Miami isn't finished making changes yet. Someone on this roster may not survive what's to come. And believe me, one of the comments made by the defensive coaching staff completely changed how fans should view this secondary going forward. I'll analyze everything for you, but before we continue, don't forget to like if you still believe the Miami Dolphins can surprise the NFL in 2026 and finally reach the playoffs. And I want to see how optimistic these fans really are now. Comment below, I still believe in the Dolphins. Let's see how many true fans are still supporting this team, no matter what happens. Now let's get straight to it. One thing became very clear from the defensive coaches speaking during OTAs. This defense is entering a completely different phase under Jeff Hafley and Sean Dugan. The Dolphins are no longer talking like a team that already has everything figured out. In fact, it sounds like they are still experimenting heavily, especially in the secondary. And honestly, that should concern some fans while exciting others at the exact same time. The biggest revelation coming out of the defensive discussions is the clear commitment toward a more aggressive 4-3 base defense. That's huge. This is not just a small adjustment. This changes the identity of the defensive front entirely. Sean Dugan openly discussed wanting edge rushers with their hands in the dirt more often, something that fits Chop Robinson perfectly because that's how he thrived back at Penn State. And Dolphins fans, think about the possibilities here. Imagine defensive packages featuring Zach Sealer lining up creatively on the edge while Chop Robinson attacks from the opposite side, with interior pressure coming from players like Jaylen Phillips and Grant crashing the middle. That suddenly gives Miami a much more violent, unpredictable pass rush. The coaching staff clearly wants flexibility and aggression up front. But here's the problem nobody can ignore. Do the Dolphins actually have enough proven pass rushers right now? Because even the coaches themselves sound like they are still trying to discover exactly what they have. And then we get to the position that should make every Dolphins fan slightly nervous: safety. This might be the biggest uncertainty on the entire roster. The current safety room is filled with question marks. Lonnie Johnson Jr., Zane Anderson, Dante Trader Jr., rookie Michael Taft, Lewis Moore, Omar Brown. There's talent there, yes, but there's also very little proven consistency at the NFL level. Even the coaches sound cautious when talking about the group. Ryan Downard praised Dante Trader Jr. for his intelligence and physicality, while Lonnie Johnson Jr. was described as bringing veteran leadership and size. Michael Taft impressed coaches immediately with his football IQ and advanced understanding of the game. But notice something important. They are talking about potential, development, traits, intelligence, effort. They are not talking about established production. That's a massive difference. And maybe the most interesting clue of all is how often Kyle Lewis keeps getting mentioned as a hybrid option moving between linebacker and safety. That tells you Miami may not fully trust the current safety rotation yet. They are searching for answers. They are testing combinations. They are trying to find versatility because they may not have enough certainty at the position. Now here's where things get really interesting. The Dolphins are expected to gain around $22 million in cap space after June 1st. And multiple hints from the coaching staff suggest Miami could absolutely use some of that money to bring in another veteran safety or defensive back. So now the question becomes, who could still be available? And how aggressive will the front office be? Because this defense feels unfinished. At linebacker, though, the situation is the opposite. Miami suddenly has an overload of intriguing options. Brooks, Terrell Dodson, Jacob Rodriguez, Willie Gay Jr. The coaches seem genuinely excited about the flexibility there. Al Washington even described Willie Gay Jr. as someone who personifies violence on the field, which honestly sounds exactly like the type of energy this defense has been missing at times. But even there, questions remain. Can the Dolphins realistically keep all their best linebackers on the field together in this new 4-3 system? Can they survive physically against bigger offenses if they go with a smaller, faster linebacker group? The coaches believe it's possible, but they clearly are still experimenting heavily. Another major development involves Jason Marshall Jr. Dolphins fans probably remember how the previous staff tried forcing him into nickel responsibilities, but this new coaching staff already seems to view him very differently. Sean Dugan made it clear they see Marshall primarily as an outside cornerback, where his coverage abilities can shine instead of forcing him into heavy box responsibilities. That might end up being one of the smartest adjustments this staff makes all year. And then there's Chris Johnson, who many inside the building already believe has the inside track toward becoming a starting corner. Combine that with Juju Brents competing heavily, and suddenly the secondary becomes one giant competition battle where coaches are essentially throwing players into different roles to see who survives. That's why fans should not overreact to every OTA report that comes out over the next few weeks. One day somebody might dominate 7-on-7 drills. The next day the same player could struggle badly. Chris Perkins even warned fans not to take OTA performances too seriously because this period is more about experimentation and installation than final evaluations. But the bigger story is impossible to ignore. The Dolphins' defense still has more questions than answers right now. And honestly, that's what makes this entire situation fascinating. This coaching staff clearly believes they can unlock players differently than the previous regime did. They believe scheme adjustments, versatility, and aggression can elevate the unit. But belief alone won't win playoff games. At some point, somebody in this secondary has to prove they can consistently perform under pressure. And with training camp getting closer every single week, the tension inside this roster battle is only going to grow louder. The coaches also made something else very obvious during these OTA discussions. This roster is going to be built around competition. And not everybody Dolphins fans currently expect to make the roster is guaranteed a role anymore. That's the energy coming out of this building right now. Jeff Hafley and Sean Dugan are approaching this defense almost like a complete reset, and honestly, some veterans should probably be feeling uncomfortable about that. Because the message from the staff sounds crystal clear: nobody is safe just because of reputation. And when you really stop and think about it, maybe that's exactly what this team needed after another disappointing postseason outcome. The Dolphins have spent years hearing about potential, years hearing about speed, years hearing about talent. But when the pressure rises in January, the defense has consistently struggled to close games against elite opponents. So maybe this aggressive mentality shift we are hearing from the new defensive leadership is not just cosmetic. Maybe they genuinely believe the old approach was not enough. That's why I keep going back to the safety situation, because it feels like the hidden storyline nobody can ignore. The fact that Miami is openly cross-training players, experimenting with hybrid linebacker safety roles, and still evaluating almost every single defensive back tells you this competition is wide open. And honestly, that could continue deep into training camp. Now imagine what happens if the Dolphins actually use that post-June 1st cap money aggressively. Suddenly this entire conversation changes. A veteran safety enters the room. A proven cornerback becomes available. Maybe even another pass rusher. And then all these young players who are currently competing for starting jobs suddenly become depth pieces instead. That's why these next couple weeks are massive for Miami's front office. Because if the coaches are